started. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to Professor Suzuki, who joins us from Japan. Let me welcome all of you in today's online roundtable discussion. My name is Peter Gorecki. I'm a senior analyst of the Institute of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Hungary, and I will be the moderator of today's event. We go on with our event series titled Economic Cooperation between Japan and CEE in the post-COVID age. And today we are going to focus on the EU-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement and especially on its implications and benefits for the Visegrad countries. We have distinguished experts in the panel to analyze the most important aspects of the topic. And I'm very glad that they have accepted our invitation to join the discussion. So let me welcome Professor Hitoshi Suzuki in Japan, who is the former Deputy Director of the Economic Partnership Division, Economic Affairs Bureau of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan. And Professor Suzuki is currently the COO of a think tank launched by himself called LLC Future Mobility Research. And I also welcome Professor Eliza Przdzieczka, and excuse me for my poor Polish pronunciation. She's the director of SGH Warsaw School of Economics, Institute of International Economics in Poland. And last but not least, Dr. Katalin Völgyi, who is an associate professor at the Széchenyi István University in Hungary. So our experts will make brief keynote presentations on the topic in, let's say, roughly 15 minutes each. Then we are going to start the discussion and the Q&A session. So the audience will have the opportunity to raise questions to our panelists. And I kindly ask our attendees to use the chat function to do that. And I will share the questions with our panelists. And maybe a few words about the agreement as an introduction to the keynote speeches and the presentations. The Economic Partnership Agreement between the EU and Japan entered into force on the 1st of February in 2019. And very interestingly, the official title of the agreement doesn't include the word trade. The title Economic Partnership Agreement rather intends to emphasize that the cooperation goes beyond trade and should be viewed as a strategic partnership, including cooperation on many levels. Even comments from the then President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, reflect that. He said that Europe and Japan are sending a message to the world about the future of open and fair trade. So I think all these aspects reflect the significance of the agreement, that it may extend beyond tariff reduction and creating investment opportunities. So I'm very interested in how you see the implications of the agreement with 2 years after coming into force from a Japanese and a Central European perspective. So I will not take more time with opening remarks. So I will immediately pass the floor to our distinguished experts. First, Professor Suzuki, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, Peter. Do you hear me? Is it okay? Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you very much to Peter and Eliza, Katalin, and Laszlo, in fact, for kindly inviting me to take part in this great event. And I'm saying not flattering, I'm saying great event, because among the Japanese people who are actually involved in the Visegrad countries are the most active part of EU economy. And while the COVID crisis is sort of serious, the Visegrad economies are recovering slightly faster than the EU average or the larger partners. And so after the thank you word, I would have to apologize that I did not have time enough to prepare a PowerPoint slide. And I've been looking up Japanese statistics, which are not available in English. And I had to put it into all English. That I thought that there was not enough time. So I'd rather sort of orally present this. And after all, I am asked to prepare a paper. So at that point, the English version will be available. So my sincere apologies that I was not able to prepare a PowerPoint in English by this time. Sorry about this. Thank you very much for Peter for your kind introduction. Yes, I have worked last year for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs during the negotiations with UK, and of course the Brexit negotiations, the post-Brexit negotiations. And I've expected that to last for several years, but in fact they concluded as fast as possible. So I decided to leave there and start what I have always meant to do, and that is to sort of invite Japanese car manufacturers to sort of supply automatic driven cars to rural areas where people are aging and they have to give up their driver license, but the public transportation is very scarce. So that's the sort of facilitation sort of job I'm doing, while also keeping research on EU and its policy and EU-Japan relations. So I think I'll speak in 4 parts. The first of all, Peter just summarized the EPA, so I'm not going to talk about that. I'd like to raise 2 examples, 2 successful cases, because that was what Laszlo had asked me to do. One is agriculture, food, and beverage, and the second one is car industry. And then I would like to come back to sum up the points as conclusions and answer Peter's questions, 4 questions, I believe, by email. So first of all, the European Commission has already announced that the EU's export to Japan has increased 6.6% during this past year. And the Japanese export to the EU has increased 6.3%. So EU is performing slightly better than Japan. And I think the EPA has already shown that it's fruitful for both sides. In which field has the EU been successful? Probably Kathleen and Elisa is going to talk about that. So I'll be very brief on this. So it's just as I said, it's food, daily products, beverage, leather products, and electronics, and especially beef, pork, cheese, butter, and wine were the successful items. So I think I'll just go into the first topic, food, agriculture export to Japan. I would like to raise 4 examples, one for each Visegrad countries. First of all, and this is sort of to tell a live image of how Visegrad countries' agriculture products are represented in the Japanese market as everyday products. The Polish Zwroka. This I bought. This was in fact available in a supermarket, not the everyday one, it's a little bit the high-end supermarket. And this costed 1,090 yen, which is 8.3 euros circa. So the products from Poland are well represented in the Japanese market. And yes, also as a high-end, high-value added product, but then also the everyday reasonable priced one as well. So I think this is a good starting point. And because today we have Polish and Hungarian participants, I think I'd like to focus on those 2 countries. Continuing on alcohol, Tokai from Hungary. This was not the sweet one, this was the dry one, which my wife Yuki and my daughter Hana and I all enjoyed with Japanese food, in fact. Chicken teriyaki and grilled salmon, which went quite well. This one costed 2,000 yen, which is about 15 euros. So it's slightly in the zone of high value added. And this was not available in the supermarket. It was available at Amazon. Regrettably, the Tokai from Slovakia has not yet arrived. So obviously it's on its way being shipped from the EU to Japan. It should be arriving this evening or tomorrow morning. It didn't make time, but this one was stocked in a Japanese warehouse. So that means well equipped. Another example, I would say, yes, I had a Polish Pilsner as well, but I think we'll continue by showing a live example of Hungary. This is a Japanese company called Renge, which is a major brand honey in Japan. And it says in English, I'm not sure if you could see it, Hungary Acacia honey. Of course, the high-end good honey in nice glass jars is available in Amazon, but this is the sort of supermarket product available in Japan. Have I sort of came up with these nice products is that I've checked up the GI, geographical indication list of the EPA, and many of them, or most all of them, are Italian, French, German products. And I've looked for Visegrad country products and was able to find the Czech hop, which is for producing the beer, but then was not able to find the others. There could be, but the majority of the list is Italians, French, and the Germans, which are strong in export. So one point I'd like to raise was that probably if we are to do a Japanese and Visegrad joint cooperation based on this network launched today, I would say that one effort could be that looking for a GI sort of registration. And this is costly. Whether do we more promote the market access first, or do we do both ends at once, which means that going for GIs definitions between Japan and the EU? That was one point. And the second point was, yes, so it's basically high value added, but not really widely known in the Japanese market. So that's the second point. Probably we could do a little bit more sort of promotion to let the Japanese public know widely, which means that if these products are more available in the everyday supermarkets, there could be a chance. And why when I'm saying this is that well, this year it's the 20th anniversary of the Visegrad countries. And more importantly, August 2023 is going to be the Japan Visegrad 20th anniversary of cooperation. So obviously this is going to be a chance to sort of present more the Visegrad countries and saying that to try something to show that the cooperation is more sort of launched and deepened. There's also the 2025 Osaka Exposition. So that means after the 2023, there's another large event, worldwide event in Japan. So that would be another possible chance to present more the Visegrad products. So that was my first successful case, and also some sort of niche which might be interesting to try to expand. The second case is the car industry, because Poland and Hungary from the Japanese side were most interested in the car industry. By the way, I've published a book on the Nissan plant in UK and Margaret Thatcher's negotiations. So if you're interested, please take a click, but probably the UK is something in the past for EU member states, so never mind. So let's go to the car industry. Successful cases. I'd like to speak about 3 points. The first is the case of Toyota's plant in France, the Valenciennes, because this is an implication for Poland and also the Toyota plant in Czech Republic. The second one is, yes, the Toyota plant in Poland itself. And the third case is for Hungary, and this is going to be the car components. The first one, the Toyota and JETRO, the sub-organ of METI, Ministry of Economy, Industry and Trade, they report that Toyota's Valenciennes plant in France has already sort of taken merit of the EPA, and they say that the cost of sort of exporting some specific components or the material components from Japan to the French plant, the cost had reduced by 2%. So there's already a cost merit generated from the EPA and already meriting Toyota in France. So the same thing would apply to Poland. and the Czech Republic. So I have not found concrete information on this, but probably it's the same thing applied. And I'm going to talk about the Hungarian case as well after this. The second one is the Toyota's plant in Jelcz Laskovic, if my pronunciation is right. I think the Japanese image of Poland is that it's more focused on the engine cars, whether diesel or gasoline. But in fact, the Yaris hybrid, the more ecological ones, are also being produced in Poland. And good news is that some components for these latest hybrid cars is also going to be produced or is already entered into the production. This is good sign, I would say, because the gasoline or diesel engine cars without any hybrid, these are going to fade out because the EU has launched a sort of carbon neutral goal, far stricter than Japan, and it was announced earlier than Japan. Toyota is slightly slower than Nissan and Honda in sort of automated drive, EVs, electric vehicles, etc. Now Toyota has entered into full swing from the latter part of last year and this year. So Toyota is going to be quite quick once it has made its sort of decision. So these high-end components and the cars themselves is going to be the topic, and it seems that Poland is in the trend in a way desirable for both sides, I think. So let's go to Hungary, the third case. It is reported, of course, the Magyar Suzuki in Hungary is the successful case widely known among the Japanese. The Suzuki Swift is also popular in Japan. Suzuki's image, Hungary's image in Japan is sort of basically based on the Magyar Suzuki's success. And it's going to be somewhat the similar story, just as I spoke about Toyota. So it's good news that Suzuki is also producing hybrid cars in Hungary as well. SX4 hybrid is, I think, has just entered into production. And it's also good news that Suzuki is now in the Toyota group as well. So the hybrid and EV products are going to be sort of going to enter into full swing, and Toyota is going to shift sort of to the high-end products. So Hungary is going to be the most dynamic part, I would say, for Japanese companies in Europe to produce the latest and reasonable priced cars, which are cars for everyone. One example of components, the Diamond Electronics, it's a Japanese component supplier, which sort of makes the electric code or to spark the fire in the engine. They report that the sort of materials exported, very specific high-end materials exported from Japan to Hungary, the EPA has been already a merit for exporting because the EPA has immediately abolished the tariffs on car components and such materials necessary for those components. And of course, we are, the tariff on cars are to fade out in, was it transition of 8 years starting from 2019. It was very important that the components tariff was immediately abolished, which means that it's not going to be Japanese cars exported from Japan to Europe. It's more the components, which means that it's going to merit European countries which build Japanese cars in Europe because components and necessary materials are going to flow. And the Japanese car exports are going to slowly follow that. So that means that Europeans could make merit of the 8 years transition to make sure that you are updated and could do good in export and also in the EU market. So those were the three successful examples. As long as it is reported in Japan on the Visegrad countries. So do I have 3 more minutes or something, I think?
Yes, sure, please.
Yeah, okay, yes. So I think I'll just wrap up. Before concluding, yes, so if there's something sort of the merit and sort of demerits or some future tasks to be solved among the Visegrad countries, I think the merit reported on the Japanese side on Visegrad countries and Japan's collaboration, first of all, is, where's my memo? Oh, yes. First of all, is the geographical good position, which means what the Japanese are doing. So it's good for plant location and exports from there. Second, good working force. And the third one is also included to that. Many young people speak English, and many of them even speak Japanese, which is very kind, because Japanese personnel sent to Europe are not always specialized in Europe from the first place. They could be specialists in Japan or Asia or Africa, and then sent to every part of the world. So that means that when they arrive in the Visegrad countries, they are not yet a specialist on Visegrad countries. So that is very nice that many people speak English and in fact Japanese. And in fact, then Japanese would have to learn Polish and Hungarian as well. So I'll try to make best efforts starting right now. The future task difficulties is reported the three tasks. First and most is the increasing labor costs in the Visegrad countries. This is most frequently reported among the Japanese companies. Secondly is the COVID-19 and the economic slump, but that's true something every day worldwide. So we just put that aside. And the third is the energy supply questions, dependency on Russia or the rising price of energy, et cetera, are reported as the 3 points. Before concluding, so I think, yes, so we have, I think, bright perspectives for 2023 and 25. In answering Peter's question one by one, rule-based EPA, what is the meaning? I think, first of all, it was sort of an initiative between Japan and Europe just because it was Donald Trump and United States absent. So it was a leadership that, it was when the United States was absent, but now the United States is back. I think still that the sort of significance for us is that we continue building on this cooperation. And we might have lost some leadership just because the United States is going to speak for global free trade. But I think the most important part is that we keep on and build on what you have already done. That's the rule base. But then that sort of generates one side point. What about shared values, et cetera, and that might cause questions. Of course, it's important because if we sort of ignore shared values, what is the difference between Chinese investment and Japanese investment? And Japanese would put priority, does the local partners merit from Japanese investment or not? I'm not saying that Chinese ignore that point, but the Japanese emphasis is that we sort of take importance that the country and the local people would merit from a Japanese investment. Peter's second point, so what are the chances for Poland and Hungary's small and middle-sized enterprises? I think I just touched that, and how could we help that? That was the third point. So agriculture was one, and also the car components. This could be the sort of latest high tech, which means that many startup small companies launched by young people does have a good chance. And I believe that both countries are supporting, giving subsidies and encouraging people to do sort of those things. So how could Japanese help those people in Poland and Hungary? I would say the first thing is that the JETRO, the sub-organ of Ministry of Economy, METI, they have offices in Warsaw and Budapest. Well, obviously, because yes, these are the most dynamic economies. So one contact point are those JETRO offices. And of course, their first purpose is to advise Japanese countries interested in Poland and Hungary. But then it's also true that that's where the Japanese business people gather and trying to find a good partner, which means that if you want to find a partner, that could be one contact point. And let's not forget the EU-Japan Center for International Cooperation that is stationed in Brussels and Tokyo, and its current emphasis is on SMEs. So I think those would be the possible helps, starting point of possible helps. And the last point, what future prospects for the EPA? I would say that the, yes, I think car and food beverage is already successful. So we sort of build on this legacy. And also, this is quite remarkable. It's not shared among the Japanese public in the wide sense, but the people, Japanese people already involved in business in Poland and Hungary already are aware that the Poland and Hungary's sort of value as a big market, a potential growing market. This sort of knowledge is becoming shared among Japanese business people. We do have to make efforts because the wider Japanese public do not see Poland and Hungary in this way. So the image is a little bit old, like building small and cheap engine cars. That's becoming something in the past. It's still true, but Poland and Hungary are quite advanced in the car industry. So the wider public, Japanese public, should be knowing that, which means that potential sort of component partners, we could find those potential partners by letting the wider public know rather than the people already involved in Visegrad countries. And last but not least, I think academic human exchanges is at the core. I think we are all interested in that. So whether during COVID-19 or after, I think we keep on like today's events. I think I'll just stop right there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Suzuki, for your very focused speech. And I especially thank you that you were elaborating on some industries, namely the food industry and the car industry, that are extremely important in the economies of Hungary and Poland. And never mind that you have not prepared PPT slides, because showing us some battles of wines, I think it was maybe even more illustrative than preparing PPT. So thank you again. And next I will pass the virtual floor to Elisa, please.
Thank you very much. Welcome everybody. This is great pleasure for me to be a part of this great meeting and be a speaker on that. Actually, what I would like to say with some slides, no bottles today. However, I'm very happy that Professor Suzuki has showed us so many examples, including Polish vodka, because actually a couple of years ago, when I was asked by Ministry of Development to analyze the effects, potential effects of EPA for Poland, we found out in the team that unfortunately there is just one product from Poland on the general geographical identification list. So it was very sad for us. It was the feeling that some products are missed, at least, which are still very competitive in the foreign market. We do have some others for offering provided by multinational firms which locates their production in Poland, as well as SMEs which are competing with their goods in a foreign market very successfully. So actually that feeling was pretty right, because nothing has changed until the agreement went into force. So let me say a few words about the analysis of the potential effects from the time perspective. However, it may somehow draw a brief picture what goods have potential for growth, for great offering in the Japanese market. First of all, I need to stress the fact that these agreements, as used to be treated as one of the most important in trade, also touches a few aspects about the investment flows. And what I have already found that it may have not so strong as in trade, but also very significant effect in a foreign direct investment flowing in both sides, both directions. As Poland already attracts lots of FDI, regularly coming from countries, neighbor country as Germany is, but also from the United States, which holds the second position as the sourcing capital country. However, for the last year, as our domestic agency responsible for cooperation with a foreign investor is saying that 2020, the year of pandemic, which everybody expects may limit FDI to zero, and all businesses were frozen for a while, or strategic decisions were postponed for a while. However, we indicated pretty large numbers of greenfield projects in that time. And what was more interesting for analyzing cooperation between Europe and Japan is the fact that these investments, greenfield and M&As, were coming also from Asian countries. So not only short distance countries as German is investing, but such countries as Japan, Korea, are interested in Poland in a market of CEE countries. Because of time concerns, I'm not going to focus very much on foreign direct investments, Polish investments to Japan, which are pretty weak actually, but Japanese investment in Poland are pretty nice because Japan holds 8th position in terms of the value of assets, 9th position in terms of the shareholder funds, and about the 10th position about the employers employment. But right now I'm going to present you a few remarks which may draw your attention a bit on trade. Trade in goods. However, I would like to stress that we cannot and we shouldn't forget about the importance of services, which actually becomes more and more important in terms of cooperation, economic cooperation, specifically in the pandemic, where everything is closed and the supply chains are stopped and still adjusting to the new normal, new reality. But services which are provided through internet, thanks to communication technologies and stuff, might be a very successful subject of trade and economic cooperation. And on this field, just one sentence more, on this field, Polish companies, including especially SMEs, which serve lots of foreign clients, wherever the location is, are very much competitive. First of all, because of costs, definitely being very low relatively comparing to other developed countries. And secondly, because of the skilled labor, as we are one of the greatest number of, we have one of the greatest number of engineers in the market. And the second position in the Europe next to Germany is the number of graduates in a STEM every single year. So we delivered more and more experts to the market, STEM engineers including, from our polytechnics and universities. So this market, this labor market seems to be very competitive and very attractive for creation of services based on knowledge-based activities for the business. But today I present a few slides about the specifically trade in goods, as the results are based on our research, which has been done for a few years actually, starting from 2018. It was actually pretty difficult to continue that during the pandemic because of lack of data. Still does not let us to assess the trade relations very much. But first of all, as you probably expect, seeing only żubrówka in the supermarkets, we are not very high up and partner in trade and exporter to Japan. However, it exists, and our products are getting more and more popular in Asian market, including Japan. What I have indicated a few months ago, that Polish cosmetics, including facial creams, are very popular among young ladies, which are looking for a bio, eco, and this kind of stuff in the supermarkets or the groceries. So such a cosmetics in that category are getting more and more popular. But coming back to the research, a few remarks coming from this job. So we based our research on the general equilibrium model, and the data was coming from GTAP database, which includes hundreds of countries, 57 sectors, and trade data on 1995 up to 2013. And it's not about the current assessment of a site or the scope of trade. This is just a background for the further estimations and assessment of the potential of a specific categories of goods. So there was just a pack of data being our assumptions. So a few very theoretical remarks about the model. It's based on the constant economies of scale, perfect competition, Armington assumption, which says that national goods and imports are perfect substitutes. And it considers separately the value of goods and transport costs in our calculations. So our results included trade effects, economic effects, specifically in terms of the effect for gross domestic product, nominal and real one, and the total output, financial effects, which is about the changes in prices, and the social effects in terms of specifically, which was the very interesting for us, the effect on the job markets. What we have seen in our scenario, which assumed 3 stages of liberalization of trade, the reduction of tariffs by 25, 50, and 100%. So full liberalization, full openness for both countries is resulted in last columns. 100%. It seems not surprisingly that the full liberalization gave us the greatest results and positive numbers and gains from trade in terms of export for Poland as well. For Poland as well as for Germany, for Japan. However, if we compare the effect of Poland and Germany, for example, from the EU countries, it seems that Poland would gain more than Germany specifically and more than EU countries. And in the special group, which was indicated, there were new EU member states, those which entered into EU in 2004. So we know that this is the group of countries comparable to Poland, including Czechia, Slovakia, and Hungary as well. So it seems like we gain more than anybody according to these results, and this is the good news at the very beginning. In terms of a specific groups and categories of goods, we have seen negative effects in the category of grains and crops, which seems to be the strongest negative in terms of 3 scenarios, and specifically full liberalization. And unsurprisingly, motor vehicles and machineries equipment. We have been trying to actually analyze that quite deeper, bits deeper in terms of previous former relationship of Poland to Japan. And what we may say and indicate in this point is the fact that Japan seems to be the long distance country and is still competing as the receiver of our intermediate goods in the sector of motor vehicles or automotive sector with Western European producers. Those multinational firms which have their roots in Germany or France. So it seems like this effect could be seen in such a negative side. However, the analysis is saying that very huge effect is indicated in the group of meat and animal products. And moreover, we have seen and find out that the most positive effect actually refers to unprocessed goods. So I'm not going to comment that in terms of the competition and the competitiveness of our goods in the foreign markets. However, this is the result, and it seems like we have a lot to be done in terms of our knowledge intensive production or development of Industry 4.0 or innovations in the industrial manufacturing. In terms of Polish imports, we indicated the negative effect, which is in the red line, in terms of meat and animal products, grains, processed food, and a very positive, because this is the decrease in import in metals, electronics, and the metal products. In total output of Polish economy, again, the significant growth in terms of meat. So it seems like meat, including pork or beef, seems to be very highly potential category of unprocessed food, unprocessed goods in the group of our analyze. And in terms of imported consumer goods, again, meat is going to be on the very first position. How the prices would change? Actually, the positive effect in terms of Poland is seen at the scenario of full liberalization. So we need to wait a little bit because the full liberalization is recognized as being within the next since now 13 years, because it used to be 16 starting from the very first day of the agreement went into force. However, only full liberalization may increase or improve our terms of trade in terms of prices in trade relations with Japan. Changes in demand for non-qualified workers. As the motor vehicles probably wouldn't be very successful from the EPA agreement and the further development of this sector. However, there would be rising demand for non-qualified workers, sorry, in terms of meat and animal products. These are COVID side effects, sorry. And in terms of the qualified workers, again, we have very similar results saying that unprocessed goods were probably the most or will indicate the greatest positive effect in terms of increase of production. So a few remarks for concluding. EPA is definitely one of the most important contemporary international agreements, which will bring numerous effects on both sides. Actually, EPA was one of the most important and the greatest partnership agreement ever negotiated by the EU countries. So taking that into consideration, we have seen that Poland was supposed to somehow improve its position and gain from these agreement sides and the effects in the long term. We indicated positive as well as negative effects in many sectors. So actually the analysis should be precise and that might be a huge exaggeration saying that EPA would bring us very positive effects in the long term for every single industry and sector. However, there are some goods which notify very significant rise in export to Japan. And actually, what I need to also stress at the end is the fact that some sectors will decrease, and it depends actually on the structure of a Polish production side and the creation of GDP in the long term, how it may affect, how such a decrease may affect on real gross domestic product of Poland. Because as you probably have seen lots of side effects of a pandemic for the adjustment of supply chains around the world, and specifically on the line of delivery of goods between the Asia and Europe. And definitely it will shape and determine our future in terms of effects of for total output and gross domestic product of the entire economy. Literature review for those who are more interested in that kind of studies based on GTAP and taking into account regular or agreements such as EPA was. And thank you very much. And I open for questions and be happy to answer them and to comment relationship between Poland and Japan, more general EU and Japan in terms of trade and foreign direct investment as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eliza, for this very deep analysis and for sharing all these statistics and data with us. And Katalin, I pass you the floor. Please go ahead with your presentation.
So thank you very much for the invitation to this event. So I'm a professor, assistant professor at Széchenyi István University, and I also work for the Institute of World Economics. And my main research fields are economic partnership agreements of Japan, and recently I've just started to deal with this agreement, the EU-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement. And in my presentation, I will focus on two things. I will focus on the Japanese imports of Japanese affiliates locating in Hungary, and the exports, Japanese exports of Hungarian economies, Hungarian companies. So I will focus on these two things and the possible effects of the tariff elimination under the EU-Japan economic partnership. So I will not speak about broad questions, so I will focus on these things. And I will start with the economic relations between Japan and Hungary. So I will give a short overview on economic relations between Japan and Hungary. I will start with the FDA relations, and I will focus on Japanese investments in Hungary, because most of the Hungarian trade are related to transnational corporations, and this is also true in the case of in case of Japan. So Hungary's trade with Japan is dominated by Japanese affiliates operating in Hungary. And so I will start first with the FDA relations. Japanese companies started to invest in Hungary in the second half of the 1970s and at the beginnings of the 1980s. The first investors were general trading companies, and a little bit later, in the second half of the 1980s, we received some investments in the chemical sector, and since the 1990s, we could see the growth of manufacturing investments and investments in the service sectors. So, but in the 1990s, we could see a change. So in the manufacturing sector, Hungary received a lot of investments from Japan in the automotive, especially in the automotive and electronics industry. And we could see a rapid increase in the number of Japanese affiliates in Hungary. In 2097, Japanese affiliates were active in Hungary, and nowadays we have 180 Japanese affiliates here in Hungary, and most of them are present in the automotive sector, and most of them are car components manufacturer. And Hungary, among the Visegrad countries, and we can also say among the Central European countries, Hungary is the second largest destination for Japanese FDI, and Japan is the second largest Asian investor in Hungary after South Korea. And so I emphasized here the FDI relations, And this is, as I mentioned, this is very important and related and determines the trade relations between Hungary and Japan significantly. And here you can see the latest data on trade between Hungary and Japan. Hungary's imports amounted to 1,114 million euros in 2020, and the exports, Hungary's exports amounted to 437 million euros. We can see a huge trade deficit, but this is mainly caused by the Japanese manufacturing affiliates, which imports a lot of inputs from Japan. So the huge trade deficit can be explained by the activities of the Japanese manufacturing affiliates in Hungary, which are mainly active in the automotive industry. And in the second part of my presentation, so I will focus on, as I mentioned at the beginning, I will focus on the possible impacts of the EU-Japan EPA on Japanese affiliates operating in Hungary. Maybe I will repeat some things which Professor Suzuki has already mentioned. And I will also speak about the impacts of the EPA on the Hungarian companies which are exporting to Japan. So first, let's see the impacts in case of Japanese affiliates. I have done a lot of research about the EPAs of Japan, and as I see, one of the most important aim of the EPAs, which Japan has concluded recently, is to support the internationalization of Japanese products and as well as the internationalization of Japanese companies. So they would like to support the Japanese affiliates abroad. They would like to support their operation. I mean, they would like to encourage and help the more efficient operation of these companies, which often imports a lot of inputs from Japan, and this is true in case of Hungary. So I checked that how many tariffs are paid on Japanese imports, and I saw that I checked the correct number. Japan paid tariffs around $2.6 billion for exports to Europe in 2017, and the largest amount of tariffs was paid on passenger vehicles and parts and accessories for motor vehicles. So, and the Professor Suzuki have already mentioned that full tariff elimination for cars and parts and accessories, and in case of cars, there is a certain transition period, but in case of parts and the accessories, so car parts and accessories, we could see an immediate tariff elimination since the 1st of February 2019. So when the EPA entered into force. So this is a very important thing for Japanese companies which are located in Hungary, and most of them active in the automotive industry. and they generate a lot of imports from Japan. And so they can benefit from this tariff elimination. And another thing I want to emphasize here, the EU-Korea FTA, which was signed in 2009. And this was very a bad thing for many Japanese affiliates, automotive affiliates in Central Europe, because they were worried about the deterioration of their relative competitiveness against their South Korean counterparts in Europe and in Central Europe. And I checked a survey of JETRO from 2012, and in this survey I saw that many Japanese affiliates and especially automotive affiliates in Central Europe, they were expected very much the conclusion of the EU-Japan EPA, and they consider this EPA as a large merit. So I think they benefit from the in this way from the tariff elimination under the EU-Japan EPA. And another thing which I would like to highlight, this is related to the Hungarian companies exporting to Japan. I will only speak about those companies which are active in the food and beverage industry. From the perspective of the EU, it is important to highlight Japan's tariff cuts on agriculture, food and products. And I think the other presenters have already mentioned these things. Japan is the 4th largest export market for European culture, agriculture and food products. And Japan committed itself to reduce 85% of tariff lies of agriculture and food products. This is a very high rate of liberalization if you compare to the very early EPAs of Japan. And in case of Hungary, in case of the Hungarian exports to Japan, we can find some Hungarian companies which export foods and beverages to Japan. And I think here I highlight only 2 products, wine and meat. I have already heard that wine is, and I think Professor Suzuki has also mentioned this thing. In case of wine, we could see a full tariff elimination since the 1st of February 2019, and this was good for the wine exporting companies here in Hungary. And we could see an increase of wine exports to Japan due to this full tariff elimination. And the other European exporters, wine exporters, we can see we became on equal footing with the competitors like Chile and Australia in the Japanese market. And I also would like to speak shortly about the meat producers and the meat exporters. They also expect some benefits, but in this product category, we will see a little bit longer tariff elimination. So in the long run, I think the Hungarian producer can benefit from the tariff elimination. And I also checked the other tariff elimination in case of fresh fruits, vegetables, and dairy products. we are not really, we do not have a high numbers in, the value of exports in these goods, or even, I think I didn't find any exports in case of cheese, but I think this is a future, this can be a future exports, maybe if there are some Hungarian producer try to expand their sales in the Japanese market, because in case of fresh fruits, fresh vegetables and dairy products, we could also find some very high tariff elimination. Of course, here we can also speak about longer transition time, but yeah, I see some prospects in this field as well. And here I would like to finish my presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Katalin, for this very comprehensive overview. And I think it was very important that you underlined the importance of the activity of transnational companies in the trade flow between our region and Japan, and the importance of FDI projects behind. As I've mentioned at the beginning, our audience can raise a question to our experts using the chat function. But maybe as a moderator, I would raise the first question and refer back to what Professor Suzuki mentioned in his speech, that our countries, Poland and Hungary, could do more in order to promote our products in Japan, in order to make our products available in everyday shops. So here I think visibility is a key issue. I think a main problem for countries in our region like Poland and Hungary in the Asian markets like China or Japan or South Korea is how to create visibility for our products. And a good example for that was what Professor Suzuki has mentioned, the coming event, I think in 2025 in Osaka, a trade show or something like that. So I'm very curious to hear your opinion if there is so what tools we have here in CEE to increase the visibility of the products and services of our small and medium-sized enterprises. And I particularly address this question to Katalin and Eliza. How do you see the chance that Poland and Hungary, while being competitors in some product and service groups, but still teaming up in increasing our visibility in trade shows in Japan?
Okay, so should I go first or someone else? Okay, yeah, thanks. Yes, thank you, Peter, for raising the question. So how to raise the visibility? Of course, the German Mercedes-Benz or BMW has lots of promotion budget, but we're not talking about those giants or Toyota, we're talking about SMEs. And in fact, yes, what tools do we have? I think I would like to first raise the COVID-19 situation, because many Japanese, or I mean, in Europe, United States, or anywhere, we are doing shopping on the internet far more than we had actually lived before COVID-19. So if we want to do promotion in the real world, like Visegrad, nice food, and trying to book a very expensive hotel or a huge hall in a very expensive hotel, that is going to be very costly. But then these days, what about Twitter and internet? Or I mean, it has to be a sort of a visibility on the Amazon JP site, which means that yes, we are in a state of crisis, but then this is quite a chance, I would say, that we don't have to actually build a huge budget and try to book a huge hotel and ask people to travel there and what about the travel fees, etc. We would use the internet, SNS, etc., which is sort of a budget saving way of promotion. So I think that is a very significant tool. And and the second point after following this is that, well, of course, any company is doing advertisement on the internet. So how do we sort of show up among the others? And that was one reason why I raised the 20th anniversary of Visegrad Cooperation, Visegrad Japanese Cooperation, and the 2025 Osaka Expo, because it's going to be a good chance to sort of do a sort of celebration sort of event. And I would say that the embassy of the Visegrad countries in Tokyo and whoever is interested, I think the universities are a good sort of sticking point if people want to gather a network in Japan and sort of try to ask the department stores or the supermarket franchising of not a huge event, but a small event, saying that this is our 20th anniversary, and why not enjoy Visegrad food, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think the budget for such does not have to be a big one. I think we sort of specifically focused one and try it on the latest methods, which the younger people are more sort of good at. I think that this is a good sign of trying to sort of raise the visibility in Japan, and the sort of a celebrity event is a perfect chance for that. And the Osaka Expo, I'm not really sure the overall plan of the Osaka Exposition is not sort of made public. We just know that it's going to take place in Osaka 2025, and that they're building a huge artificial land by sort of pouring tons of sand into the sea and making a new island there. Or they already made one, but the main purpose for building that island was not used in that way. So they were looking to host a big event. So that was why Osaka Expo was there. Sort of launching a pavilion, like the German pavilion. Of course, German and French do have enough budget, but then it doesn't have to be one pavilion in one country. What about a joint one, et cetera, et cetera? And that's going to be budget saving. I'm not sure if the EU delegation is going to be willing to help specific member states. So that would mean that the Visegrad countries would have to depend on your own sort of budgets. But then I would say that the Japanese side, some of the Japanese side people would also be willing to help in terms of sort of promotion. And I think that is one point which should be and could be sort of cultivated in the following years. And obviously the Japanese side is willing to also join the core, saying that the EPA, EPA is a good thing. We continue and enforce this. There is good motivation behind the Japanese side. Yes, on the economy and industry side, but also the political side. And we are always conscious of the Chinese large investments and Chinese investing to the African countries, et cetera, et cetera. We could not simply size the Chinese investment in terms of amount of money because their economy is larger, but then we do want to sort of make contribution in specific ways, which would be merit for both sides. So I think those would be some of the tools, but I would admittedly have to admit to Peter that we need to find methods in this, what I mentioned is just a starting point. Thank you.
Peter, can I take the mic?
Sure.
Okay, I think product marketing has changed for a few years now, and we do see a very significant impact of internet, social media, and this is a chance for even the smallest producer somewhere at the end of Poland to reach a Japanese consumer. The question is how to reach the market by a good, because this is long distance, transportation is costly. And actually there is one very significant barrier, which is language. So if we somehow may reduce these barriers, that might be easier to be more opened for both markets and to be actively competing on the domestic market with the domestic products. Moreover, I would like to indicate the role of social media in terms of influencers and the impact of these unknown people for one day, but very popular with the hundreds and millions of followers, which actually is one of the best tools now in terms of consuming goods, selling and promotion in the market. So TV advertisement and such traditional tools are pretty old-styled, and the feeling as the old-styled by young people who are, as you know, and all of us knows, are the most actively seeking foreign goods in the market, because they are open for such novelties, and they would like to try a new good, a new style, a new type of taste, and so on and so forth. And I think we actually have, as Poland and the Polish producers, have a very important task to be completed, to be more visible around the world, because people are traveling, and if they taste and try a good in one place in the world, where they are home, they would like to have the same if they like it. Because the global world, in spite of pandemic, I hopefully and truly believe that will be in the new normality, new normal, but people would be back to traveling and to discovering new places and new countries. So goods and especially consuming goods supposed to follow them from one market to another, be flexible in terms of adjusting and customizing these goods to foreign markets. So this is another task to be completed for companies to be flexible for preparation and customizing goods dedicated to specific places. Another point is the desk, the style of promotion internally of the one specific country in another place. As desks are pretty popular in Poland and operate in a public side as well as private one, as companies including legal and consulting agencies are organizing such national desks. I have heard about a lot of them. We have a Canadian desk in a few consulting firms. We have American desks, for example, in American Chamber of Commerce, which is the association and the foundation promoting America in Poland. So what about Japanese desk? Japan desk, whatever, might be a kind of economic or trade diplomatic elements in order to promote the market, selling market for Polish producers. And of course, there is a huge role of trade promotion agencies on the public side and administration, working as the investment promoting agencies, which are, I think, in terms of Poland, very seen in the market in terms of the other countries except Japan is. So these are my remarks. I think pretty complex and from different words for younger, for olders, but there are lots of opportunities, and these barriers, what I have mentioned at the beginning, are pretty difficult to be limited and reduced, however possible for doing that. And if we think about the global market, very open, with a very open mind, we are able to figure out how to reach such a far distant country as Japan is for Poland.
Thank you, Eliza. Katalin?
Yeah, I only have some remarks. First, yeah, I think it can be a good solution to promote our products. I mean, the production or promotion of products from Visegrad countries through e-commerce, but I don't really know too much about the habits of Japanese consumers. So if a company, I mean a Visegrad company or Hungarian company would like to promote their products or sell their products in form of e-commerce, yeah, I think first they have to know many things and collect many information about the habits of the Japanese consumers. Without this, I don't think that can be successful. And another thing, this is only a solution how to sell a product, but it does not mean they really know what we sell. We try to sell them. So I think they also have to I think every people needs physical contact. They would like to taste products or so see with the physical eyes, not only on the internet. So I mean, this is a very interesting thing, but I think the companies have to I think they have to, if they would like to engage, get engaged with these things, then they have to know more about the consumers and their habits. And another thing, I have to emphasize that there is a center which is called EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation. And I found that they have an EPA help desk for small and medium enterprises. So I think if companies from Visegrad countries, I mean small and medium enterprises, would like to internationalize their products and they would like to go to Japan, maybe they can get some help from this center and many information of the EPA and the tariff elimination and other things as well. And in case of Hungary, I found that we have an office in Japan, an office of Hungarian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And I think this chamber can help the promotion of Hungarian products in Japan. So I think they who would like to sell the products in different products in Japan, they have to be present there. And I think the Hungarian Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the branch office in Japan, they can help the promotion of Hungarian products in Japan. Okay, thank you.
I'm really sorry to say that our time is up. I feel sorry because we have heard so many promising ideas from you on how to expand the export activity of small and medium-sized enterprises in CE, that I can only hope that some of our government's officials were listening to our discussion, because I think they can they can profit a lot from hearing your opinion. So thank you very, very much for accepting our invitation to today's discussion. And I also thank you for the audience for joining us today. I wish you a very pleasant weekend and keep your health.
Thank
Wish
you.
you all the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.